In today's video, I'll teach you how to crochet these 4 types of single crochet, and we'll also check the main differences between all of them. So I crocheted some samples and I put some labels inside so I wouldn't get lost while explaining the differences to you. And let's start with the yarn over, yarn over. And to crochet the yarn over single crochet, we insert the crochet hook in the following stitch, yarn over the hook. You see that the yarn is over the hook. Bring the yarn to the front and yarn over the hook again. Insert in the following stitch, yarn over the hook, yarn over the hook once again. And you see that we create some sort of V shapes in our stitches. They look very cute. I will do it one last time with you. Yarn over the hook, yarn over the hook. And this is the yarn over stitch. Now let's move on to the second one, which is yarn under, yarn over. With this one, we insert the crochet hook in the following stitch, yarn under the crochet hook, yarn over the crochet hook. I will do it again. Yarn under the crochet hook, yarn over the crochet hook, under the crochet hook, over the crochet hook. With this yarn under, yarn over, you see that we create an X shape in our stitches. We do not have the V shape anymore. Let's compare the yarn over and the yarn under, yarn over. Let's move on to the third type of single crochet, which is the yarn under, yarn under. And don't worry, because I will talk about the differences between all these stitches, both while we are crocheting and the final result in the amigurumi. So to crochet the yarn under, we will insert the crochet hook in the following stitch, yarn under the hook, and yarn under the hook again. Under, under. I will do one last time with you. Yarn under the crochet hook and bring it through the loops, yarn under again. And with this yarn under, again, we have an X shape in our stitches, very similar to the yarn under, yarn over. And now the last type of single crochet, which I have to be honest, it was my first time doing it, which is the yarn over, yarn under single crochet. And for this, we insert the crochet hook in the following stitch, yarn over the hook, yarn under, and bring it through both loops. I will do it again. Yarn over the hook, yarn under to bring it through both loops. One last time. Over, under. And this is the fourth and last type of single crochet. But now I know you're curious, what are the main differences between these single crochets? Well, let's talk about all of them. Just so you know, the type of single crochet that I do in all my amigurumi is this one, the yarn under, yarn over technique. But let's go one by one. The yarn over is, I think, the most common and I would say the most traditional way. That's the way that usually people do, even when they start crocheting amigurumi. As I mentioned before, the yarn over creates a V shape in the stitches, which is super cute. I have no problems with that, but the V shape tends to create two effects in the amigurumi, which is something that usually people complain a little bit. The first thing is that the stitches tend to slant a little bit to the side when we crochet, and this is something that lots of people ask me, how do I keep my stitches so well aligned, one on top of the other? I would say it's because I use the yarn under, yarn over technique, because as it creates X shapes, it tends to keep the stitches one above the other, while with the V shape, they tend to go a little bit to the side. Of course, there are other factors that make it happen. It depends on your crochet tension, the crochet hook, the yarn that you use, but usually the V shape creates a bit more stretchy fabric. It's not so sturdy as the X shape that we create with this type of single crochet here, the yarn under, yarn over. So since it's not so sturdy, it also tends to create some gaps between stitches if you do not have a very good crochet tension and you're not so experienced. Just so you know, there is no right or wrong with any of those stitches. All of them work. You can get amazing results in your amigurumi with all these types of single crochet. It is a matter of preference, but we have to emphasize that there are differences with each type of single crochet. And in my opinion, the gaps between stitches, and especially when we are crocheting amigurumi that has some color changes, like my baby stitch here, you see that if I crochet it with the V shape, that tends to go a little bit to the sides, the right or the left, depends on how you crochet. I would not have this perfect color change outlined here in the amigurumi. And that's why, especially when I have color changes, I prefer to use and recommend the yarn under technique. The second thing is regarding the size. All the samples, I crocheted exactly the same amount of stitches and rounds, so it would be easier for us to compare. And if I have to compare just these two, the yarn over technique, since the stitches are not so tight and it tends to create a bit more gaps and the stitches tend to be a bit more loose than with the yarn under, the sample that I crocheted here is also a bit bigger than the yarn under technique. But now let's talk about this one. As I said, this is my favorite stitch, the yarn under, yarn over technique. It creates X shape in the stitches. You can see that I have an X shape in the stitches. My sample is a bit more sturdy. I have a bit more robust aspect in my amigurumi, which is something that I usually like. I don't see gaps between stitches. And as I mentioned before with the color changes, I think this stitch goes really well to avoid slanting stitches. And now you might be asking, why do I do the yarn under, yarn over and not the yarn under, yarn under? These two, when we look at the samples, you see that they are extremely similar. Both of them create the X shape, but you see that the yarn under, yarn over is a bit bigger than my sample that is yarn under, yarn under. And now to talk about the main differences between these two single crochets here, I need to say that at least for me, it is the crochet tension and the amount of strength I put in my fingers and my wrists. I usually crochet with the pencil grip. I do not crochet with the knife grip. I only use the knife crochet grip if I'm using a bigger crochet hook size and some chunky yarn, but for smaller projects and using fingering yarn, I crochet with the pencil grip. And if I put too much strength in my wrists and my thumb, I tend to feel a lot of pain. And for that reason, the yarn under technique is not one that I personally would do because the stitches are so tight. My God, you have no idea. You can look at the difference. You can create some samples to verify yourself. How do you feel with all those single crochets? But just so you know, my stitches are already pretty tight with this one, the yarn under, yarn over. And you can see when I compare these two, that yarn under is even smaller than this one here. So to create this, I put so much tension and strength to keep my stitches closed that I would not recommend crocheting an entire amigurumi with this thing, unless it's something that already feels natural for you, because perhaps this is the way that you learned how to crochet and you're used to it. If you're still learning and if you're still deciding the one that you should keep for your amigurumi projects, I would definitely go with the yarn under, yarn over technique. You have a sturdy fabric, your stitches will be closed, and you do not put that much strength and tension in your wrists. And now the last one, the yarn over, yarn under technique. And I mentioned to you that this was my first time crocheting this one. I don't know anyone who uses this yarn over, yarn under. Please let me know in the comments if you use this kind of stitch, because I think it's very interesting. But my impressions while crocheting with this one is that, first of all, the stitches, I found them a bit weird. They were not so defined. While here I have a beautiful V shape, and with these two I have beautiful X shapes, here with this single crochet, I found the stitches a bit confusing. They are not exactly a V shape, but not an X shape. I don't know if it's so clear with the camera, but for me, some of those stitches, they were a bit confusing, and I really value stitch definition. If you see my amigurumi very closely in the photos that I take, or whenever I show them here on YouTube, you see that my stitches are really clear, and I highly value having this in my crochet pieces. But with this one, I didn't see the stitches so well defined, and honestly, it bothered me a little bit. I think it's even easier if we put other samples together. You see, yarn over, and this is the weird one, the yarn over, yarn under. You see that here the V shape is really well defined, the X shape is really well defined, while with this one, at least for me, I felt a bit weird. In terms of size, I would say that the size of this sample is a bit closer to the yarn over, a bit smaller because there is yarn under involved, and since it tends to make the single crochets a bit more tight, then it's smaller than this one, but not that much. I think these two samples were very similar in terms of size, but the main difference for me is how the stitches look like. And please let me know in the comments if you do this kind of single crochet and what are your impressions about it, because, well, I am crocheting amigurumi for 10 years and I have never met anyone who crochets with this type of single crochet here. And perhaps this was an impression that I had just because it was my first time doing it, but I crocheted twice or 3 times the sample just to see if I got different results, and the results were the same. And that's it. Please let me know in the comments, what type of single crochet do you usually use in your amigurumi? What are your favorite ones? And if you are this person here, please let me know, because I'm very curious to hear from you. Remember to give me a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new tutorials, tips and tricks videos that I bring here every week.